Hello and welcome to Casper College. My name is Melissa Staley Cummings and I am the Director of Assessment. Today I'm going to be talking about course evaluations. We evaluate courses that are credit bearing and have more than 5 students. We have 5 collections a year, 2 for early ending courses, fall and spring, and end of term course evaluations, which are the majority of the evaluations. We also have a summer course evaluation. You can find the date of all these collections on the assessment website page here. The survey questions were created by the Faculty Senate and contain questions about the student, the course, and the instructor, evaluate overall quality and effectiveness. At Casper College, we use online evaluations with a platform called Evaluation Kit. For every collection, you will receive an email from assessment@caspercollege.edu reminding you when the course evaluation will open. You will receive another email when the collection period opens. This email will have a login link so you can view your classes and the response links. This link is personal to you and takes you straight. You might want to know who has completed the evaluation, and this can be determined by you in Evaluation Kit, or your students can forward their email of completion to you. This email looks like this. When will you see your results? Good question. You'll receive a follow-up email when your results are in after grades have posted. This is typically a couple weeks after the semester ends. I found a good article on the Chronicle of Education that talks about how to read your evaluations at this link. It talks about reading them, scanning for trends, scanning for red flags, thinking ahead, and evaluating yourself. A common student complaint is that faculty do not return graded papers in a timely fashion. Tease out useful data. Don't be upset by an outlying comment or a personal attack. Of course, this is easier said than done. Just know that you are in the majority if you have one scathing criticism. We all get those from time to time. Only worry if there's a pattern and trend and correct that issue. Your department chair will help you in identifying trends and patterns and what is useful information for you on your course evaluation reports. Also know that course evaluations are only one piece of data. Your dean or department chair will also provide other evaluations that will help you along your way. Do not hesitate to reach out to your department chair, as they will also view your course evaluation reports and can help you analyze the data. Finally, it is important to generate a good response rate in your course evaluations, as we think student feedback is helpful to you and the institution. Typically, we see at least 70% response rate college-wide, with many faculty receiving 100%. This is usually done by letting your students know it is important to you to hear their feedback and providing an incentive. To discuss ideas about this, do not hesitate to give me a call. Also, look for upcoming evaluation kit trainings. I typically hold at least one training a semester, and you are always welcome to attend. If this doesn't work for you, when you are logged into Evaluation Kit, you can access help tutorials and videos. We will now watch a short video together about accessing your reports.
Hello and welcome to our tutorial on our instructor results feature for instructors. This feature allows instructors to navigate results for the courses they have taught across multiple projects and create batch reports. From the dashboard, you can access instructor results by going to Results and selecting Instructor Results. Here we see a list of all the courses this instructor has taught across all projects. You can filter by selecting a specific project or several projects to search within. You can also sort by course code, title, unique ID, hierarchy level, or project. This feature is useful for an instructor who is wanting to view their course evaluations throughout time or over the span of several projects. Here we see that there's a specific finance course that has been taught over the past several projects. You can access individual reports for each course by clicking on the View icon under the report column, and here we have the options to download a quantitative PDF report plus write-in comments, or an Excel spreadsheet. We can also create feedback regarding the results for this specific course in the results feedback feature. You also have the option to generate a batch report. If we select our courses and click on batch report, Here you would give the report a name, and then we're given 3 options for different batch reports. You can create an overall merge PDF report that includes all of the selected individual courses for this instructor in one large PDF file. You can generate a zip file that includes all of the individual course PDF reports, or you can create a comparison report of the selected courses, which will then be organized by survey question. You also have the option to include or not include the write-in questions within this batch report. To clear results and start over, you would simply click on the reset option. And that is our instructor results feature for instructors. I hope you have found this tutorial helpful.